Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is so wonderful to have you with us because today we're going to fix that problem. We are exploring a fascinating set of ideas, a toolkit, really, that claims it can completely change how the world sees you.
And I'd argue, perhaps more importantly, how you see yourself.
Exactly. We're diving into a source that gives us what they call a golden mantra. It sounds pretty simple on the surface, but the implications are actually quite deep. The mantra is speak good, speak well, speak clearly.
I know we might be thinking, sounds a bit like a grammar lesson,
A
right?
little bit, yeah.
But the source makes it very clear this is not about grammar, it's about influence. The research suggests that communication is, well, it's the master key. It changes your career path, it directly impacts your income, and it even changes your self-respect.
That is a huge promise. But when I think about it, it feels true.
Hmm.
We all know those people who are just magnetic. They walk into a room and the whole energy shifts.
Yes, the source actually asks us to visualize this. So just close your eyes for a second. Imagine a person. They're not some famous movie star. They're not a billionaire in a fancy suit. They look, well, like an ordinary person. But when they open their mouth to speak, you feel something different.
Their words have weight. You want to listen to them. You actually want to be around them.
Today is about helping you become that person. We've pulled out 10 specific keys, 10 really actionable tips from our source material. These are practical tools you can start using the moment this deep dive ends.
So let's unpack this. We have to start at the very, very beginning, the moment you walk into a room. This brings us to segment A, the first 7 seconds.
And this creates the foundation for everything else. Our source highlights a psychological fact that is honestly a little scary. People decide if they like you and if they respect you within just 7 seconds.
7 seconds? That's incredibly fast. I mean, I haven't even said hello yet. I'm probably still looking for a place to put my jacket.
That's exactly the point. This brings us to tip number 1. Say without saying. The source argues that something like 70% of the impression you make happens before you even open your mouth. It is entirely about your body language.
So we're communicating even when we're silent. Okay, let's look at a concrete example to make this super clear. Let's imagine a high-stakes job interview. You're the boss, and you have 2 candidates waiting in the lobby. We can call them Candidate A and Candidate B.
Okay, so picture candidate A. He's sitting in the waiting room chair. He's, slouched over, kind of collapsed into himself. His shoulders are down. He's looking at his phone, just endlessly scrolling, maybe looking a little bored.
He looks like he wants to be anywhere else. Now, what about Candidate B?
Okay, so now look at candidate B. He isn't doing anything crazy. He's just sitting straight. His shoulders are relaxed, not all tight and nervous. He has a gentle smile on his face. He looks calm. He looks ready.
Now, before either of them has said a single word, who does the interviewer already like more? Who do they assume is more competent?
It has to be candidate B.
Just based on that visual.
Correct. His body language is broadcasting a signal. It says, I am confident. I respect myself. The deep insight here is that your body speaks so much louder than your words. Posture and eye contact, they're the first language we all speak.
It seems so simple, but I catch myself slouching all the time when I look at my phone. It really does make you look small.
It does. And biologically, when you slouch, you actually tell your brain that you're in a low power position. So the actionable advice here is simple, but hard to remember. Stand tall. It signals strength to others, but it also signals strength to your own brain.
Okay, so stand tall. But there's another part of our mindset that is crucial in those early moments. This leads us to tip number 5, emotional intelligence.
This is a massive topic. I mean, you could read whole libraries on it. But the source simplifies it for us so beautifully. It comes down to one key distinction: the difference between reacting and responding.
Oh, I love this. I think I know the difference. Reacting is, well, it's what I do when I stub my toe on the table. It's totally automatic.
Exactly. Reacting is impulsive. It comes from that fight or flight part of your brain. It's often emotional or defensive or angry. Responding is different. Responding is thoughtful. It's calm. It is a choice.
The source gives a great example here. Imagine you are in a meeting. You've worked really hard on an idea. You present it, and someone criticizes it in front of everyone. Maybe they're even a little rude about it.
Yeah, that's a tough situation. Physically, your heart rate goes up, your face gets hot, and most of us, we want to react. We want to defend ourselves immediately or, attack the other person.
But the person with high emotional intelligence, that magnetic person, they do something else. They pause.
This is the golden pause. They take 3 seconds, they breathe, they let that initial wave of emotion just pass, and then they say something like, "Thank you for the feedback. I'll think about that."
That is so powerful because instead of starting a fight, you build a bridge. You look strong because you're in control of yourself.
That's the key. If you react, the other person controls you. If you respond, you control the situation. So the advice is this: pause before you speak, especially when you feel a strong emotion. It protects your relationships.
It buys you time to be smart. I like that. Okay, so we have the mindset, we have the body language. Now we need to actually connect with people. This brings us to segment B, connection tools. How do we make others feel good about talking to us?
This starts with tip number 4. The source quotes the famous author Dale Carnegie. He said that a person's name is the sweetest, most important sound in any language to them.
The sweetest sound. I really like that phrase. It makes total sense. When someone uses my name, I perk up. I pay attention.
It's your identity. When someone uses your name, they are validating your existence. Let's look at an example of how this can change a simple everyday interaction. Let's talk about a guy named John.
Okay, so John is at a coffee shop. It's the morning rush. It's busy. It's loud. The staff is stressed out. John orders a drink. He tells the barista his name is John.
5 minutes later, the drink is ready. Now, the barista could just shout, "Caramel macchiato," and that's fine, it's a transaction. But imagine she looks up, makes eye contact, and says, "Have an awesome day, John."
And suddenly, the whole energy shifts. John is not just customer number 54. He's John. He feels seen. He feels a little bit special. And he probably smiles back.
That is the takeaway. Use names naturally. You don't want to overdo it or it can sound a bit creepy. But just using a name, it creates a spark. It transforms a transaction into a real connection.
It's such a small thing, but it really, really does matter. But once we're talking, how do we show we're really listening? Because sometimes I am listening, but the other person doesn't feel heard. That brings us to tip number 6, the echoing technique.
This is a very easy, practical tool. Sometimes it's called mirroring. Echoing just means you repeat a small part of what the other person just said, usually the last few words.
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here. Why does that work? Does it not sound like you're just copying them, like a parrot?
It really depends on how you do it. If you do it gently, with a sort of questioning tone, it's magic. It proves you're locked in. Here's an example. Imagine a friend says to you, "I am so stressed at work lately."
Okay, so if I use the echoing technique, I would just say, stressed at work.
Exactly. You ask it like a gentle question. You're inviting them to explain. And what happens next? They naturally open up more. They might say, "Yes, my boss just gave me 3 new projects and the deadline is tomorrow."
It's like an invitation to keep talking. It's so much better than just saying, oh, that's bad.
It is. It validates their feeling without taking over the conversation. And that validation leads us directly to tip number 3, empathy.
Empathy is a word we hear a lot these days, but the source defines it very specifically. Listening with your heart, not just with your ears.
Beautifully put. It's about understanding the emotion, not just the facts. It's the difference between seeing someone fall into a hole and saying, "Oh, you're in a hole," versus, climbing down there with them.
Let's go back to that friend who is stressed. A bad listener, or maybe just a distracted listener, might say, "Oh, don't worry, it'll be fine. At least you have a job."
And that's a classic mistake. We call that silver lining the problem. It just shuts the conversation down. It dismisses the feeling. Empathy looks different. Empathy says, "I can imagine how that feels. That sounds really tough."
So you aren't trying to fix it. You're just validating them. You're building trust.
And when people trust you, they want to listen to you. They want to hear what you have to say. Which brings us to our next big section.
Yes, segment C, captivating the audience. This is all about delivery. Once we have their attention, how do we keep it? How do we make sure people don't get bored?
The most powerful tool for this, by far, is tip number 2, storytelling. The source has a great phrase for this. Facts tell, but stories sell.
We're wired for stories, aren't we? We've been telling them around campfires for thousands and thousands of years. It's just how our brains store information.
Correct. Facts. They activate the language part of brain. But stories. Stories activate the sensory parts. Let's look at the example of Mike.
Mike. Okay, so I could give you a fact. I could say, hard work is important for success.
And I would nod my head and I'd probably forget that sentence in 5 minutes. It's a true statement, but it is boring. It has no emotional hook at all.
But what if I tell you the story of Mike? Mike lived in a small village. He had no electricity, no internet, but he had a dream of becoming a doctor. So every single night, Mike took his book and he sat under a streetlight, the only light in the village, to study. The bugs were biting him. People walked by and they laughed at him. They thought he was crazy. But years later, Mike came back to that village as a doctor. And he saved the lives of the very same people who laughed at him.
Now that I will remember.
Right. You can see the streetlight. You can feel the struggle. You feel something for Mike.
That's the big takeaway. Stories make you unforgettable. They create an emotional movie inside the listener's mind. If you want to persuade someone, don't just give them data. Give them a story.
It's the difference between information and inspiration. But, even a great story can be boring if you sound like a robot. And that's why we need tip number 7, voice modulation.
Your voice is an instrument. It really is. It's like music. If you play the piano, you don't just hit the same note over and over and over again. You have to play different notes. The source breaks this down into 3 parts: pitch, pace, and pause.
Okay, let's unpack those. How do we use them in a practical way?
So pitch is high or low. You use a high pitch for excitement or questions. You use a low pitch for seriousness or authority. If you stay right in the middle, you sound monotone.
Pace, that's speed, right?
Yes. You speak fast to show action or excitement, but you speak slow when you want something to land, when something is really important.
And a third one.
The pause. The source calls this the silent power.
It creates suspense.
It does. It makes people lean in. It gives them time to process what you just said. If you can master these 3, pitch, pace, and pause, you will never sound robotic again. You'll sound like a leader.
I love that. It takes practice, for sure, but it makes such a difference. Now, there's one more tool to captivate people, and honestly, it's my favorite. Tip number 9, humor.
Humor is just excellent. It breaks tension, it builds trust, it creates a bond. But the source gives a very specific warning here. It's about being relatable, not about being a clown.
Right. Don't try to be a stand-up comedian. You don't need a rehearsed routine. Just be human. The source gives a great example for a job interview, which is usually a terrifying, humorless place.
Yes. Interviews are so stressful. Everyone is serious. Imagine the interviewer asks that dreaded question. Tell me about a time you made a mistake.
Ooh. Yeah, you could get nervous, you could start sweating, or you could smile and say, only one mistake, I have a whole collection.
And then immediately you give a real serious answer. But that little moment of humor, it relaxes everyone in the room. It shows confidence.
It shows you don't take yourself too seriously. People like that. It makes you approachable.
Exactly. It signals that you're comfortable in your own skin. And when you're comfortable, the people around you feel comfortable too.
Now, we are moving to our final section, segment D. This is about boundaries and authenticity. Because being a good communicator doesn't mean just making people like you. It doesn't mean saying yes to everyone.
No, absolutely not. In fact, powerful people know how to say no. They protect their time and their energy. This is tip number 8, the broken record technique.
The broken record. For our younger listeners, a record creates music on a turntable, and if it scratches or breaks, it repeats the same part of the song over and over.
And that's the concept. This technique is designed for when people are pushing your boundaries. It is how to say no without getting into a big fight or a long explanation.
Okay, let's use a social example. Peer pressure. Imagine you're at a party. You have an early morning tomorrow. Someone offers you a drink.
And you say politely, no thanks, I'm not drinking tonight.
But they push you. People often do this. They say, oh, come on, just one. Don't be boring.
Now, usually, this is where we try to explain. We say, oh, I have a meeting or I have a headache. But when you give a reason, you give them something to argue with.
So what do you do instead?
You don't explain. You don't get angry. You just repeat the exact same phrase calmly. No thanks, I'm not drinking tonight.
But it's a celebration. It's my birthday.
No thanks, I'm not drinking tonight.
Wow. It feels a bit awkward at first, but it really does stop the argument dead.
It does. When you don't give them new reasons, they can't argue with you. They just hit a wall. They eventually give up, and surprisingly, they respect your boundary because you held it so firm.
That is a lifesaver. It takes all the stress out of saying no. Now, we have arrived at our final tip, tip number 10. And this might be the most important one of all. It's vulnerability.
This is where true connection happens. So many people think vulnerability is weakness. They think they need to look perfect to be respected. The source says the opposite is true. Vulnerability is strength. It connects hearts.
It's about being real. In a world of, filtered Instagram photos, being real stands out. We have the story of Emily to illustrate this.
Emily is a successful businesswoman, and she was giving a major speech to a large audience. She could have just talked about her success, her money, her awards.
But she didn't. She told the truth about her past. She talked about where she was just 5 years ago.
She shared a moment when she was completely broke. She describes sitting in a tiny, cold kitchen, just staring at a packet of instant noodles because that was literally all she could afford to eat. She felt hopeless. She felt like a total failure.
But she decided, that night, in that kitchen, to rebuild her life.
And why is this story so powerful? Because people do not connect with perfection. Perfection is distant. People connect with struggle.
The source has a great line for this. People admire warriors, not superheroes.
Think about that for a second. A superhero is perfect. They're invincible. But a warrior has scars. A warrior has fought battles and maybe lost a few. When you share your struggles, you become a warrior. And you give other people hope. You show them that they can overcome their problems too.
That's a beautiful place to end the lesson. We've covered so much ground today.
We have. And if we look at the big picture, the message is really clear. To be a powerful communicator, you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to use big words. You just need to be real.
A clear mind plus clear words equals power.
Exactly. Whether it's using those first 7 seconds to show confidence, or telling a story like Mike's to inspire, or showing vulnerability like Emily to connect, these are all just tools to build a bridge to other people.
So I want you to go back to your comment from the start of the video. Now that you have these tools, these 10 keys, are you ready to change your answer to yes? Let me know in the comments.
We really do want to know if this helped you.
If this video gave you value, please hit the like button and subscribe. It helps us reach more people just like you. See you next time.